today to do my spoiler review for Bird Box by Josh Malerman. If you are wanting to give a review and don't want spoilers, I will include a link below in the description box for my spoiler-free review. Otherwise, stay tuned in. So this book, if you're tuning in to the spoiler one, you know most likely that it is a post-apocalyptic science fiction novel. It bounces back and forth along Mallory's timeline using flashbacks and then flash forwards to present day. The gist of it is that during the fall of civilization, there were these creatures that were causing people to go into like these homicidal and suicidal rages and kill themselves and others. Weird premise, but okay, I'll bite. I'll go with it. And as I mentioned, you follow Mallory during this time, and then I think the present day is 4 years after the fall of man. That's all I'm really going to say for the synopsis. I'll move into my likes and dislikes, or as I wrote in my script, my likes and likes. That's not the case. There are things I did not enjoy, but perfect typo, Nikki. Within my positives, the first one is that I really enjoy kind of the world building, because understand a lot of what's going on because it's just present day, it's just with a twist. The use of the flashbacks are really nice because they really add context and flavor to the story, and they really emphasize the fear and paranoia that you're dealing with Mallory, which I really appreciate because it adds flavor to her character. My second positive is that I largely enjoy how the creatures are handled. I'm not a huge fan that you never really understand what their origin is, but in terms of how they're dealt with to build tension, and how they're dealt with in terms of the fear that their presence induces, I found it to be very effective in terms of atmosphere, and overall it added a lot to the story for me. And my third positive is the different stereotypes that were in the characters during the flashbacks. While not all of them were the perfect stereotype, a lot of them fit into these stereotypical roles that people are assumed to take on during the fall of civilization. Like, you get the competent, calm, collected leader, and you get the sports jock, you get the animal lover, you get the guy that is dealing very poorly with it, you get these young women who just don't know what to do because the lives they led before this were a lot more sheltered, and it's just lots of stereotypes, and it led to a lot of really interesting situations. The fact that they were stereotyped made their interactions pretty predictable, which in this case wasn't a bad thing, because for me it made the story a lot easier to follow. Now I'll move on to the negatives. For me, the ending was probably the weakest part. Not so much that the compound she went to existed, or that it still existed despite the amount of time that had gone by. My issue is more that it was too convenient, and just the ending that the existence of the compound itself provided. It just felt like the stakes that had been built up in the rest of the book just were completely unimportant. And it didn't feel satisfying because of that for me. The second negative for me is the pacing. While I enjoyed the tension and how it was built using the creatures, I found the pacing to be very, very hard for me to follow or get into. It would be pretty fast-paced, in my opinion, in the flashbacks, but in the present day, I found it to be very, very slow. And I think it's because the present day point of view is happening over a single day, so we're breaking it down into these small chunks of time, whereas the flashbacks are covering a larger period of time. So roughly the same number of pages seem to be allotted to 3 or 4 days versus 30 minutes. And so the amount of things that are happening in each time frame is differing. And every time I went back to that present day point of view, I really struggled to get back into it because the storytelling would slow right down. And then my final negative was how Mallory interacted with the kids and how she seemed to comprehend the kids. I understand that it was just fear and absolute fear was what was controlling that for her. But the fact that she just calls them boy and girl instead of giving them names? I get that you're you didn't name them because you were worried they were gonna die. But come on, after you've raised them and it's been 4 years and they still haven't died, like, I'd like to think that there's a good chance they're gonna survive. And it's like, my parents know that I'm gonna die someday, but they didn't not name me. And so it's just, like, I get it, it's such a fear-driven response, but just the fact that the kids didn't have a name just drove me up the goddamn wall. Alright, now I'm gonna jump into characters. I really don't have much more to say about the characters here than I did in my spoiler-free review. I'm ambivalent to the kids. They're there, they're useful, but they're ultimately just tools for the story. I don't particularly care for Mallory. I don't hate her, but she's just a very unimpressive main character. And the amount of, like, just the way her internal monologue comes across, I just don't care for her. She's not who I would necessarily want to follow in a post-apocalyptic story. And as such, I just didn't really connect with her. The stereotyped characters in the flashbacks, while I enjoyed them, and there's nothing wrong with them being stereotyped, they are just a little flat, and again, are largely tools for the story. And while I appreciated their presence, I'm just someone who likes a little bit of character work, so I'm always going to mention it when it's not there. I'm not saying that they're stereotyped in hopes of turning people away, it's more just like, that's how I would summarize them to tell people about the book. So that's about all I got for characters. Like I said, it really is about the same as what I had for the spoiler-free review. So I'll just jump in, do a quick wrap up, kind of get that out of the way for you guys. I gave this book a 3 out of 5 stars, and it boils down to really that I liked the book but didn't love it. There were a lot of elements that I found really intriguing and unique and a lot of fun to read, but then things like the characters kind of got in the way of some of the other parts of the book. And while using flashbacks, I think, really helped establish the world and give some context and vibrancy to it, the present day was just very demotivating, and I wasn't a huge fan of Mallory as a result of of how you get to know her in the two different perspectives along the timeline. And it was a good story. It just wasn't a 5-star vibes with me on every level kind of story. And I completely understand why so many people love it. As a result of me having enjoyed it, and I know a lot of the things I have issues with are not going to bug other people, and, like, I wish everybody enjoyed every book they read, but that's just not going to be the case. And that's really all I have to say here, guys. Like, good. It was a good book. There are people I definitely would recommend it for. It's just not something I would recommend broadly. And with that, I will leave you here, and I will see you in the next video. Peace.